Welcome to Wisco Dice. This is episode 83 of the Wisco Dice Tabletop Gaming Podcast, and today is August 1st, 2021. On today's episode, we will cover our D&D campaign, Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden, our hobby corner where we catch up with our miniature painting projects, and of course, we'll discuss the games that we've been playing. First, let's go ahead and meet our hosts. I'm your host, the Conesy with the most.
Hey, and I'm Suzanne.
This is Matt, the Ghost Walker.
Hey everybody, this is Justin, the Meeples champion, coming at you.
And Stark Raving Mad, also known as Brian, is here.
All right, excellent. So let's go ahead and dive into our first topic. And that is going to be, what games have we been playing? And let's go ahead and start with Blood Rage. So, Brian, do you want to talk a little bit about Blood Rage? I know you just got to play this one for your first time.
Yeah, I had my first play the other board game night. You and Dustin, our buddy, were playing. It's actually a cool mini or not game. Has lots of cool miniatures in it. Blood Rage is like a Viking Ragnarok kind of themed game. And yeah, there's 4 factions we had in there.
Yep.
So they all have unique miniatures for the factions, and there's a handful of monsters as well. So those were all kind of really cool and stood out to me, being a miniature guy. I guess the playtime runs about 90 minutes. I think that's what we did even on like my first play. Dustin and you had more experience, 2 to 4 players. I think you had made a comment like 3 kind of seemed like a good sweet spot. Like 2 was a little kind of different gameplay, you were saying, as far as how the first turns roll around and stuff like that. Well, the game plays over like 3 ages, and you have kind of like a action kind of efficiency game. You're kind of playing. You have like cards that can upgrade your clan or your leaders and your warriors, and then the board game map is kind of divided into a few different realms, and you're placing your minis on there to battle and kind of pillage and gain the reward of those various realms to either increase your stats or just kind of straight score points and stuff like that. So you have like a rage tracker in every whatever age, and most of the actions you're using rage to complete. So at some point you're kind of balancing that out, and I think pillaging was the only thing that was kind of a free action for the most part, unless you had some other special ability. And it seemed like generally the strategy was to kind of use some of the upgrade cards and stuff like that to kind of maximize some scoring multiplication situations. It seemed to work out. I kind of stumbled into one in the second age where I got all my dudes killed during Ragnarok. Like at the end of each age, one of the realms or whatever will get wiped out during Ragnarok. So everything there dies and then goes to Valhalla. And then at the end of the age or before the start of the next following age, all your warriors come back. And I had it worked out where I got bonus points when they died during Ragnarok and then bonus points when they came back during Valhalla. You had something similar where you were getting lots of points when they came back from Valhalla and didn't mind your guys dying in battle a lot of times. I think that was called like a Loki strategy kind of thing.
The Loki strategy is, I think, all about like losing combat and then getting points out of your stuff when it comes back out.
Yeah, a lot of the upgrades were kind of it's all themed around Viking stuff, so a lot of the upgrades were named after the various gods and such. And I guess I don't know what Dustin had for a strategy that time, but he seemed to pump all of his like base things up quite a bit, which worked out for him. I think we had a pretty close game.
It was close, yeah.
Considering, and I kind of lucked out with that one strategy I stumbled into, but for our first play it was pretty good. And it seems like there's quite a bit of replay there, just based on what cards you get. You kind of draft the cards for your hand at the beginning of the game, so there's some variance there. And yeah, just kind of where you stumble into. I feel like it's kind of hard to lock in to do a certain thing in the game, like each time, like just depending on what cards you get. So it kind of flexes you out into trying different things every time. And the miniatures were really cool. One minor critique I had, like, everybody had a different named faction that were kind of a theme, but they didn't have like, a little special ability. Like we talked about that after, like maybe it's good because everybody's balanced out that way, but just having different factions, the only difference was your miniatures were a little different. Otherwise they played the same. So that was good for a balance, but we compared it to like Cthulhu Wars, where kind of the they're so like individual, like they all play completely different. Like I thought it'd be nice to have just a little thing there to kind of add some flavor to each faction, but it does work a lot better for the balance probably. Do you have any other thoughts to add?
Well, I will say that Blood Rage is turning into rapidly one of my more favorite games, and I like it. I love Cthulhu Wars. Cthulhu Wars is definitely in my top 10 of all games that I've ever played, and will continue to be there. But Blood Rage is so much easier to get to the table and scratches all the same itches. For a game that's all about dudes on a map fighting over territories and territory control, like, oh, I got destroyed off the map this age. Well, no big deal. That played into my strategy, and I'm right back in it the next stage, taking territories, conquering. It's, oh yeah, you're going to lose guys. It's not that big a deal. Yeah, and that is executed. There are so many territory control games where Game of Thrones, the board game, that do that, and you can just be annihilated and stuck having to play the game for the duration of the game very early. So that was really good about it. And then the rage tracker, being able to basically use the equivalents of what is power in like Chaos in the Old World or Cthulhu Wars to pay for your actions, whether that's putting more dudes on the map, moving your dudes around, playing special powers that are granted as things from the gods. All these things make it great. I really enjoy it. Suzanne, you played it as well.
Yep, I played it as a 2-player with you, Ben, and it scaled, I think, okay. The fighting was a little bit boring because you only had one other person to go after. But, it does scale the board down. It's a lot, like Ben said, it's a lot easier to get to the table than Cthulhu. You can transport this. It's all in one box. Our Cthulhu, it's a bucket and several heavy boxes. You don't really want to move it, and it takes a lot longer to set up.
I need a pallet, I think, about it at this point to move Cthulhu Wars.
Probably.
It's generally a longer game, too, isn't it? At least when I
Yes.
played it.
A little
It
longer. Not that much longer, actually.
Okay.
Well,
Like-
and like Brian mentioned that all of the factions start with the same 0 abilities, which Cthulhu you kind of start with different. So Blood Rage is nice, especially if you're a beginner or you're trying to teach it to someone. You don't have to remember what someone else's faction does compared to your faction to help them and make sure that they are understanding what they're supposed to be doing. So that way it's really nice. You can build your strategy and change your strategy during the game depending on what cards you draw, which is fun also. It's a nice little game. I enjoy it very much, and I want to play it at a higher player count. I don't know if I'm as gung-ho about it as Ben is, though. So, but it's definitely fun, and I will play it anytime it's offered.
That's awesome. So why don't we dive into our next game, which is Fort.
So Fort, we actually played this morning for Board Game Brunch. So Justin, Ben, and I were able to play that.
Yep.
And which was nice to play it as a 3-player. Previously, I'd only played it as a 2-player. It's by Leader Games. It takes under 60 minutes, really, even with a teach on there. It's not very complicated. It's a card drafting and hand management game about building forts and eating pizza and making friends. So all the things you want to do as a kid. Your friends, though, can get lured away, so you need to build the best fort possible to keep everyone there. You start with a deck of cards. You play a card. You can use some actions, and you can make the action stronger by other cards that you have in your hand. And then you recruit and more friends to come and play at your fort, building it. The end of the game is triggered when someone has 25 points, someone's fort reaches the highest level, level 5, or your park deck is empty. So basically you've recruited all of the friends that are playing at the park that's possible, and there's just no more to come and play with you guys. So I do like this game. One thing that I feel is missing is the actual construction of a fort. You have a little track that says it goes up. I really was hoping that there was some way that I could have some visual representation of a fort being built. But, it's hard with a card game. This is very transportable. It's in a very small box. It's a fun game. It's a game that will get played here and there. It's not going to be one that I'm probably going to play and pull out every month. It's one that you also could probably play with non-gamers pretty easily to teach it to them. So I don't know what you guys were thinking about this game.
Yeah, no, I had heard of Fort before this, but like you said, my expectation was that it somehow involved construction of a fort, when it's really kind of a deck building game where you gather friends to build the fort more abstractly, just by gathering the resources of toys and pizza, like you said, to push your sort of fort level up a track. The benefit of that is it's a quick and easy to learn game. I think, it would be obviously more complicated if you introduce some type of building mechanics or whatever. I think it does a good job of what it is, and the art is really great. I mean, Lita Games has great art, obviously, from Root and Oath and stuff. I enjoyed it. I definitely did not figure out a good strategy during the game. I didn't really get a good engine going, kind of, as you're choosing cards. Every turn you recruit and choose cards into your deck to add to your deck, and then you draw 5 to play. Some will just let you gain resources. Others will let you increase your fort level. And I think I was very much behind the cycle where you guys would have gathered enough resources, and then somebody would play a card to increase your fort level, and I just didn't have the resources whenever they got played, so I wouldn't be able to follow your action because I just didn't have the resources to do it, or maybe I had the wrong cards in my hand to kind of match the suit of the action you were playing. So I felt like I was a little bit behind the curve on just keeping my engine going for being ready to take advantage of what cards you guys are playing too. So it makes me just want to play it again to try to figure it out. So no,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think the big thing with this game is thematically it doesn't fit the bill of what it says it is on the box.
Yeah.
The cards are all the neighborhood kids that are playing in the park. None of those are tangible components that ultimately go into building your fort, which would be so
paint,
much more
no
thematically
or something, right?
So much more thematically
Yeah.
satisfying. So all it really ends up being for me when I'm playing the game is I'm thinking about it as, oh, hey, it's a bunch of these kids, and you are the kid who's trying to entice the kids playing at the park to come over to your house to play, and it becomes a popularity contest, which was horrifying for me as a child and brings back all those negative childhood memories about not having anybody ever come over to play. But it's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and we'd only played it as 2 players previously, which it's another game that I think it's more enjoyable having 3 or 4 players. It only plays up to 4, but having that extra player or 2 just made it so much more enjoyable because there was more options for you to play off of things, more options for you to recruit your recruit friends off of other players, just more things that you could do that I just thought it made the game more dynamic and better than it did it as a 2-player.
Yep. It was also easier with 3 players to gain resources, is what I found. The first couple times I played, it was hard to get resources because you maybe are playing off of your one opponent's card, but now I had 2 opportunities to follow the leader's actions. And this game I did play a little riskier than I normally would. I was like, well, hey, even if I wanted to use this card for myself and could double it, hey, if I can get resources by following the leader's action, I am going to do that. And just kind of taking those risks. But like Ben pointed out, it is a lot of popularity. I would rename the victory point track that they have the popularity track. Because, who's the most popular going up on there.
Yeah, because you're gathering toys and pizza to and enticing other kids to join your crew. It makes sense. Yeah.
I want to buy your affections.
Yeah.
Is what I just heard.
Some kind of fictitious fort you're building in the whole process that makes
really
no
abstract,
difference.
Which is shockingly real to life. But so what I'm curious, I want to ask you guys because I have not seen the game yet. Is how do you think this would play? Like, could you teach this Because it is sort of a deck building game. Could you teach this to younger people, or was this the level of strategy maybe a little bit more complicated?
I think the level, because the cards have all of these symbols, and then you have to be able to translate those symbols, and there's so many symbols that I think it's going to be hard for
That's fair.
A younger kid.
Yeah.
This is going to be. This game seems to me to be targeted by those of us that had childhoods that are, the 70s, 80s, 90s childhood when you would be able to go out with no parental supervision, get out of the house, kids, and go play that. That's where that appreciation
Come back for
comes
dinner.
from. Yeah. I don't want to see you till dinner time.
This would, though, be a good game if you have individuals who are gamers, but their English is a little bit more limited. So, or whatever language you have the rules in is more limited. Once you're actually playing the game, you don't need to read anything. It's just the iconography. So once you know what the iconography is, you can figure out the cards.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be good if you're traveling internationally. Take it and make some friends.
Good deal.
All right, man. Why don't you tell us about Lost Ruins Varnock?
Yeah, I was actually really excited. We were able to I was finally able to find some time to play Lost Ruins Varnock. I played it with Suzanne and her daughter and my wife, and we got an opportunity to play it. I don't want to rehash the whole thing, but you're basically for anybody who doesn't know and hasn't seen our earlier episodes, you're like a Indiana Jones style game. You're doing some worker placement. You've got some deck building elements. I do agree with some of the comments that were made earlier that it's a little jarring for some of the components, because they do have some really cool components, and then you just get a few things like the money and the compasses where I think it was just a bit of a missed opportunity. But I totally understand cost. They could have had some really cool plastic or some other things they could have done there. For how the game played, I will say one of the things I really liked about it was I feel like it's a super simple game to teach, but the depth of the strategies underneath it caught me off guard, because I felt like I was behind at the start of the game. And I think to one of the comments you made earlier, actually from Fort, that game has an engine built into it. And if you get behind on the engine at the beginning of the game, you are hosed. And I missed that deeper strategy of the engine. And the hard part on that game, I felt, is if you're the fourth player, it's hard when you start the game because of the worker placement elements. It's kind of like if you've ever played Everdell and you're the last person to go, it's like, hey, look, all the good spots are taken. Yeah, you're going to suffer from that. So you have to make some difficult decisions if you're a last player. I mean, they do give you a few extra resources, which is nice, but there are some, let's just say, very limited opportunities in the beginning of the game to get some of those special resources. And, if somebody jumps on those early, it's going to be an expensive and difficult first few turns. But I mean, I still think there's a lot of strategy there that I hate to say it, I really want to get back and see it on the table again, just because I feel like I'd love to take that challenge on again and be able to see if I could spin it a different way or come up with some totally different strategy that would be more effective. But, the way I went into it was a little bit light, which is great. But then I was like, oh crap, I screwed up my engine, and now I'm behind the whole rest of the game, and it was just an impossible thing to dig out of. But no, I still thought it was fun. It was thematic. I love the art. It was just a whole lot of fun. Suzanne, what were you thinking? Because you've played it a few times now.
Yep. So I've played it a few times, more than a few probably actually by this point. And I've played a lot of it as a 2-player game and a few 3-player games of it. I do disagree about starting player. When I started as a first player, like the last game I played, I had too many options. I didn't know where to start, what was the best way for me to start with the game and to get an engine running. So I never really got an engine running. I felt like, well, I'm just going to grab this because it seems good right now. when I have a few less choices, that helps me focus on what I should do. And in our 4-player game, I believe I was the last person.
You were third.
Or was I third?
I was
Okay.
fourth.
Okay, I could have, but it was towards the end. It was a lot more helpful for me with that. I do enjoy the game. There's the cardboard components, and they're fine, and upgraded ones will be nice, but I don't mind them. It helps me remember which ones I can upgrade and which ones I can't all the time. Yeah, there's so many different tracks with it. It's fun. It's a little bit player interaction. I'd like a little bit more. I'd like to fight people for... I don't want to add some fighting component
She's
to
like,
it.
I want to boot that person off of that dig site. I
Yeah.
want to take him out and just...
Which would be great if I played with Ben, because he knows I just go and attack him the whole time.
Yeah, she does.
So
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I mean-
I've played Lost Ruins of Arnak at least a dozen times now since it came out. Both physical in-person play combined with Board Game Arena. And because of that, I feel like I've started to really learn the game in a way that made me view the game much differently than when we had reviewed it and I had a limited number of plays. And I'm finding myself liking the game more and more the more I repeat play it, because there is that depth, but also it's a different game every time you play it.
Mhm.
That said, there are certain things that I feel like you have to do. Things that I learned by watching our savant, Justin here, play it twice, and he basically had it, I think, on the first play. Kind of nailed on what you should probably do. And because of that, there's things like you need to get those assistants. You need to find ways. It's a game where your action economy is so limited that anything you can do to generate more actions or generate more resources without you having to spend a resource to do it is so effective. So yeah, getting those assistants, getting artifacts. The artifact cards are the cards that have cards where you can replace your assistants or take your assistant back off the board, because you're never going to get any more workers to go get stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those things are so big and so powerful in this game. Like I don't know that you see that until most of us see that until you've played the game 2, 3, 4 times. And really start to get a handle on it. Of course, Justin being the savant in this
you're
game.
giving me way too much credit. I just sort of picked a thing when we played that first time. Like, oh, assistants. I'll focus on that for a while, and that worked out really well. So
She just randomly stumbled into
I
the
picked a
good
thing
strategy.
to focus on. Yeah, exactly.
And then he scored like 70 or 80 points both plays. So.
Well,
I used it effectively.
But
so,
this
I
is
mean,
kind of why I equate it in a little bit to like playing, like anybody who's ever played Everdell, because Everdell has kind of the same mechanic, totally different approaches. But my point to like, you have to have economies for how you do your actions, because you're going to run out, and you can find yourself running through the game very quickly.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, it was eye-opening the first time I played Everdell against somebody who knows that game inside and out. And I literally watched them play for 45 minutes after I was done, and I just like stared at them dumbfounded, like, I have no idea how you did what you just did. But they knew the engine, and they understood the concept of economies of how do I reset this and do things without wasting resources. And I feel like there's that depth of strategy buried in Lost Ruins of Arnak that I would have to play it enough to be like, okay, now I get it. Now I understand how I can combine these two cards to get a much greater impact than what I did. So...
All right, so that's Lost Ruins of Arnak. So let's dive into our hobby corner. I'll start with talking about what miniature hobby and projects I've been working on. So I have been knee-deep in Dungeons & Dragons prep. As the Dungeon Master, I need to do probably the most prep work out of all of you jokers that are playing. And that means that my 3D printer has been running pretty much nonstop. My paintbrush has been going pretty much nonstop at working on some really cool top secret sets for upcoming gaming sessions. So lots of dungeon tiles, lots of various accoutrements, accessories to really when it hits the table and those encounters happen, I just want people to when I go, okay, wait a second, and I go into the back room or something to go get one of these things and drop it on the table, and everybody just go, wow. And so I'm really working towards. I don't know that I have anything that's going to hit that completely out of the mark yet, but I've got. I think the next session or so is gonna. There should hopefully be some really cool wow moments where hopefully you guys as the players are really appreciative. So there'll be pictures of this actual project. The one that I've been doing the most 3D printing up on the blog post for this one. I don't want to give too much away because the session that it will likely hit the table is the next session, our next session here in August. But that running that Creal, that since we bought that Creality Ender 3 3D printer, it's been such an amazing investment. Just Lost Ruins of Arnak. I've got coins printed. I just need to get time to paint them. I got compasses printed. I just need time to paint them. The Terraforming Mars tiles that I've done so far look amazing. Anytime I've had a game where I'm like, oh, that game needs something for a component, it's so easy to find an STL file on Thingiverse and go print it and then start painting it. I see so many things now that are miniatures, and I'm just like, I just can't print miniatures to that level of quality. I'm going to be happy. Mm-hmm. But all anything terrain, board game components, totally great. It's been a great $155 investment.
Nice.
So into my projects, talked about D&D. I had my Sorcerer model I was working on. It was a Sorcerer model from Reaper. I did a little bit of green stuff customization on it. I had it in the works in our last cast, and I think our first session was a little bit after that. I got it to about maybe 80% for that session. I kind of just ran out of time after procrastinating on it, and I was able to finish that up. I was really inspired after our first session, so I busted it out pretty quick after that, and I only had a few details left to finish, but I was really happy with how that came out. I was really inspired. It had been so long since I've gotten to play anything a lot. Like, that's usually where my hobby inspiration comes from, so it just really got my juices going again, and I was really happy putting all the thought into that mini. I was actually meaning to write up a blog post just on everything. Like, I thought about planning it and, like, kind of customizing it for fun and painting it and all that, so it was just really inspiring to have that back. And luckily, it overflowed into my slightly lackluster VC21 project. That's my Vampire Counts Fantasy Army from ages ago. I was looking for COVID downtime to kind of bust out a lot of hobby work on that neglected project since I hadn't been playing anything else, so may as well play a game or paint a game I don't play too often. And I'm really happy, like, how inspired I was with that D&D mini. It carried over into my zombie painting again. So I got 5 more just about done, and I'm really excited to carry on into my next group of 5. And I think I only have 10 more models left, and then that unit of zombies is done. So then I can continue on to something else. And that probably gives me about 50% of the now planned little army I have for the end of the year. So it's getting real close, so we'll see if that kind of gives me some inspiration to carry on with it.
So that means the next time we play Warhammer, you're going to still play me with completely unpainted models?
Well, since your comment poked at me about it last time, maybe not. Well, for sure the zombies should be there this time. I only had like 5 mostly done when we played that first time, so I didn't bother putting them on the table. And then the ghouls are my other unit that's painted, and they're so expensive, like, that's almost half the army when we were playing only 1,000 points or whatever. So
yeah, you brought the kick Ben's teeth in list, not the hey, let's play with my painted fun stuff.
We'll see. We'll see.
Well, that's generally a target, Ben. Let's just kick Ben's teeth in.
Yeah, probably true.
Yeah, my target painted list isn't even probably a good list at that point. So it might be about 1,000-point army, but it's more for like a good group of stuff to paint. But so maybe you'll have the opportunity to beat me back.
We'll see. We'll see.
Last episode, I had an unpainted miniature from Reaper. It's the name of it is, if you're curious, is Jordan, Half-Orc Paladin. I am happy to say that I pretty much have finished it. I was able to finish it before our first D&D session, and I'm pretty happy with it, given that Like painting is fairly new to me. I really got it to a place that I was happy with, and was able to get some more paints to get some special colors that I wanted. I got a nice bright gold for some of the details on it. Was able to experiment with mixing some different colors and kind of I worked with a couple metallic colors and mixed some of those to get some different metallic sort of sheen on some of the armor. So the way I painted it, he's kind of got one group of armor pieces that are sort of a silvery metallic color, and then there's some like individual parts that are sort of a real dark, almost black metallic with kind of gold highlights and gold trim. So that was really fun to it was really like the first one I've done that was just like all my own ideas instead of following my Learn to Paint kit that I had been working on. So very, very fun. And I need to probably find another miniature for my character who is less nicely armored. The one I painted has got like full plate and like all this fancy looking stuff. And like right now in the game, I think I just have some chainmail or something. So
you need a level 1 version.
Yeah, I need to find a level 1 version. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. What are you working on, Matt?
I am knee deep in the middle of. So I go through this process. I'm working on a Joker crew for Batman miniatures game. The hard part I always go through, and for anybody who's kind of done planning for a while and painting, is because I want there to be some symmetry. I always struggle with trying to figure out exactly what I want the paint scheme to look like and how I want to do the blends. So I'm at that kind of beginning stage, and I lay a whole bunch of base colors on a whole bunch of different models, and then I come back, and then I'm like, okay, how do I want the highlights to look and things like that. So I try a whole bunch of different things on different models. So I kind of have this hodgepodge going on, and none of it particularly looks done yet, but that's kind of part of my process. I always try to find like sort of the color schemes and sort them out on the in the Batman world. This is the Henchman to start, because if I can get it right on the Henchman by the time I'm working on the Joker and Harley Quinn, and they will have slightly different color schemes, but you kind of get your blends down before you get to the boss models, and then you really kind of have it nailed by the time you're working on them. So that's where I'm in the middle of right now. So it's just getting those colors sorted out on the crew and working on that. So
very cool. And there just happens to be a couple of blog articles up on the Wisco Dice website to help you with deck building already. So, and it'll be
that will be super helpful for me.
A future article for how you manipulate the actual Joker deck cards. Right now, I've just done the analysis on the standard generic objective cards. So,
and it'll be interesting to see how you two play these very similar crews differently.
Yeah. No, there's definitely Joker has so many models to pick from. You have a lot of choice as to even what version of leader you want to use in that crew. So it'll be a lot of, I'm sure, like no two Joker crews are going to look exactly the same, but they will play very similarly, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, to add to our BMG fun, I am not putting out any new models. I have not actually made any or painted any models. That fun all goes to my husband because he is the painter in the family. But I had been thinking that we have a lot of terrain that is based on the city. And so you have really tall buildings, which is great with my Birds of Prey crew. But it's a little bit hard to see around at times. And I do lose opponents and even my own models sometimes behind buildings. And I saw someone making some terrain out of resin, and I thought that looked like fun. So I am working on an iced pond to start slowly, very slowly building a wintry city scene, hopefully. So right now it is just at the fun shaping the foam core. I am making up the process as I go. All the tutorials I saw, I wasn't going to go and buy a whole bunch of new materials we didn't have, so I'm trying to figure out what we have that I can use. I have the project I talked about last time, the lighting the building up, that I should let you guys know, that is on hold until the painter in the house has time to paint up the outside of the building so I can hook up the electrical. But next time, I should hopefully have a finished or near finished pond to share with everyone.
So do you really call that a pond, or is that more of like frozen sewage or frozen Ace chemicals?
Nope. This one is going to be an actual frozen pond to start with. We'll put it on the outskirts of town where there is no waste. And if it turns out, then we'll see. We'll get some of the chemicals in there.
That'll be your evolution. She's going to be
Yep.
the mistress of ponds and strange women laying in ponds handing out swords or something like
There
that.
you go.
Well, the end of Batman Returns with the whole penguin sequence with he's in that park and the penguins come out of the pond, kind of like
And
cave.
scoot
and
him, yeah.
That's kind of, I think, the look and feel we're ultimately going to try to have on this table.
Seems fair.
Yes, I am on the search for some tiny little penguins. 'Cause I'm not going to trust myself to make any, but
Coincidentally, Night Models produces those mini penguins right from their website.
oh, well, I have not looked there yet.
They're actually models you can get in the crew.
It sounds like a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
It'll be fun. It'll be something different to play on too.
Yep.
So I'll make sure to post pictures of everyone's progress on our blog for this episode too, so you can follow along.
Yeah, make sure you check out WhiscoDice.com for all of the pictures of our projects and all of the pictures that will support and go along with this episode. So with that, let's go ahead and take a very quick break, and when we come back, we'll get into our main topic. All right, and we're back. So let's go ahead and just talk a little bit about Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. This has been something that we have been in months of planning and preparation to try to kick off, and it finally happened. Darn it, adults and having lives that you have to try to schedule around, which is the number one enemy of D&D. But we have a year's worth of sessions on the calendar now. We know people are going to miss some, but we're going to keep this thing going and going strong. So that's the idea, is if you don't play when you're scheduled to play, it will fall apart quickly. So with this campaign, it's the Cold North awaits you is what I put out, I think, in all the emails so far. It's kind of the high-level code name I've given the campaign. It's really driven off of this campaign module book that Wizards of the Coast put out, Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden, and the whole premise is it's set in the land of the Forgotten Realms in Icewind Dale, this normally very cold, very much the edge of the frontier settlement of 10 towns that mostly are fishing villages, where their greatest wealth is their lakes, where the only place in the realms that have this type of fish, the knucklehead trout, exists. There's also a small mountain with some dwarves that have mined for iron and some other valuable ores, nothing too valuable. The whole area is generally not particularly wealthy. There's wealth, but it's an area where people go to be forgotten about from the rest of the world, or to hide from things that are in their past, or to just maybe try to find a new bit of luck. But the whole area has been covered in darkness for the past 2 years, and the best that you get during the day is now a twilight for about 5 or 6 hours. And at the night, there's this aurora that goes across the sky that brightens things for a little while. Most think that it's Auriel the Frostmaiden who is casting this magic across the land. Oh, by the way, I'm talking about the high-level stuff that's on the outside of the cover of this book. We're going to be talking about this in more detail as we talk through our characters and what we played through in this first session later in this episode. If you are planning to play or as a player in this campaign, I hate to tell you to stop listening now, but because we want you to, all of our listeners, but you probably don't want some surprises, so it's best to stop listening at this point, because we will be spoilers for the campaign. That said, that's kind of where we start. Our players started in a little town, the biggest town in the 10 towns, called Bryn Shander, and that's where we'd like to go ahead and turn it over to you guys to start introducing your characters. What are you guys playing in this campaign? Tell us about them.
Sure. So I am playing a character by the name of Ianros. He is, like a lot of people in the Frozen North, he's a little bit of an outcast. He is a half-elf. He's a monk. There's some interesting things hidden in his background that I don't want to get into yet because I don't want to spoil it for our friends that are sitting at the table here. But he's had not the best life, but not the worst life too. And he found himself hiding. Maybe hiding's a bad word, but let's just say hanging out in Bryn Shander for a little while away from one of the other 10 towns where he grew up in. So. But the nice thing is my wife is also joining me on this campaign, and she is playing a little halfling called Frederica, who is super high energy druid halfling who's just like kind of over the top, doesn't have a problem telling you her opinion in 30 seconds or less, and just really kind of, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how she progresses and jumps in on things. So,
I would say definitely Frederica's character jumped out immediately, like right away. There was one other character that did this the first time when we're going through the introductions of these characters, because there was just so much. It was like, whoa, there's like all of this bounce and energy as she introduced the character. It was really exciting.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's an interesting, and not to take too much of a diversion, but I actually met my wife through role-playing games like this, so it was exciting for me to finally get back into something and see her kind of get back into that kind of in-character kind of fun. So
it's awesome. Hey, this is Justin. So my character in the campaign, his name is Koth, and he is a half-orc paladin. Koth has a little bit of a sad backstory, and I haven't shared this with the other players, but I'll tell you a little bit now. I'm not going to get into too much depth, but basically Koth was abducted from his orcish mother when he was very young, and essentially sold into slavery. And for most of his youth, he was essentially forced to fight in like gladiatorial arenas and pit fighting arenas. He is definitely a skilled fighter, but there was kind of a part of him that rebelled against his orcish brutality that really excelled at this kind of combat. He kind of eventually saw the light and at some point refused to continue, fighting, and rebelled against his sort of slave masters and escaped eventually. And so he is out sort of just pursuing his own destiny and trying to keep ahead of anyone who might be pursuing him. If you rebel against an organized ring of slavers, there's going to be consequences. So that's Koth. And then I will also introduce one of the other players' character. Our friend Jason is playing another halfling, but he is a rogue, and his name is Lyndall Featherfoot. And Lyndall has a bit of a seedy past. He is involved in some thieving and criminal activity, but ultimately is a good character, and he basically broke away from his thieves guild or his thieves group when they started to get into some really nasty stuff. So he is pursuing his own fortune, but still has some ties to his seedier past. So
how would Koth put it?
Koth would say Lyndall is good.
I do say Koth. Ianros isn't sure he trusts Lyndall as far as he can throw him, but we're walking down the same path for the moment. So we're okay.
Yeah.
But he's got that sort of fast talking thing going, and like he's a smooth talker, but
yes.
I'm just like, my character's like, yeah, you just tried to justify homicide. I'm a little confused.
I will say, the other character as we're going through the introductions that really jumped out at me was Koth. As soon as Justin started doing the Koth, it wasn't much of a voice, but just the way you chose to phrase your sentences, and that just all of a sudden it doesn't take a whole lot for a character to
it was very distinct.
jump out and be distinct, but it was like, and everybody laughed. The first time Koth spoke, everybody laughed. It was another one of those great moments. He had the bubbly, energetic halfling, and then it was, and I am Koth. I don't even think that was exactly it, but it was just perfect.
It's kind of funny. You wouldn't think, but sometimes that voice of the character just adds a level of depth that you're like, okay, this is gonna be a fun character.
So, Brian, why don't you tell us about your character?
Sure. It's kind of hard to follow up Koth there, I guess, but I talked about my sorcerer character to continue the half trend going. He is another half elf in our group. He's a Reged tribesman from the Reged Glacier, so he's a bit of an outsider, kind of out of his element in this town. Again, not too much has been revealed about his backstory in our campaign yet. He kind of remains a bit mysterious. But yeah, he's a tribesman. I don't think it gives away too much, but he's kind of on a quest to solve this darkness revolving around Oriel and trying to do that for his tribe. Like, he's all about helping his tribe out. So he's kind of come to town to kind of start his quest and figure out where he's going. We've all kind of met and come together on the same kind of terms, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there. Not too much else to reveal about him now. I guess you guys might have picked up on it in our thing. I guess I haven't cast too many spells yet, but I've kind of themed his spells around like kind of hot and cold elements. It's been a lot of fire now. I was kind of thinking in my backstory, like, we're in this icy, snowy realm. Like, fire's probably a pretty good defense against, all the monstrous and dangers, and not freezing to death helps. So I've kind of centered him around that for now. So
I appreciate
kind of
not
been
freezing to death.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, the temperatures in Icewind Dale are, because of the everlasting darkness, are a normal day you're going to see a high of maybe negative 35 degrees out with just wicked wind chills. So like when you're out like outside of town, it is very risky.
So it's like northern Wisconsin.
But worse,
Except
probably.
worse because there's less trees to break the wind.
Is that the normal temperature in like normal Icewind Dale, or is that like with there's no sun temperature?
No, this is with the no sun temperature.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
Icewind Dale would be more. I would equate Icewind Dale as being a bit more temperate. Certainly, they more northerly, like areas of Canada, as far as seasonal, or Alaska as far as seasonal normally, where you would have, in normal conditions, where you would have an actual summer where things would grow and get green and the lakes would thaw and you'd have more fishing. Like, there's big boats on some of the boats. There are large boats, like large fishing vessels, where crews of 10 or 15, 20 people would be able to go fish for these knucklehead trout. And right now, most of the lakes are pretty much frozen over, or wet water. It is broken up with ice. Chunks and whatnot, so it's in it, and there's no grass or anything. It's all just snow, and snows on a pretty regular basis. Even though we're in roughly the January month of the year, which is making things a little harsher.
Oh, and it's like that sort of. We're almost being forced into that sort of Arctic, Antarctic. Like, the temperature drops a lot when it gets dark outside. So.
Which I don't know if they... One thing I will say from the DM's perspective, they gloss over. They say it at the beginning of it, but then I think it's really glossed over how harsh. And I think it's being written from people who want to run a D&D mechanic in this environment, but have never really experienced what absolute bitter cold and snow can do to a person. And so... I'm very fortunate that we're all Wisconsinites, live here.
Are we?
We're all Scotties, at least most of us are, and that we have an idea of what that's like, because that's going to help play into the ability to roleplay that environment and to think through, like, hey, I am about to go take a trek where I might not see town or a building again for a few days. What do I have to prepare myself for? What kind of things do I need? I can't just go out there with a bedroll and hope the heck to survive.
Yeah.
So if you ever want to kill us, it just gets too cold one night when we're out in the wherever. We just all die.
You know, that doesn't seem like something
No.
that
We're all
a
here
good
to have
DM would
fun.
ever do.
So
So-
he's really looking for that TPK, you think?
No. I have a full 2 year. I've got a full planned 2 year investment in this thing. I wanna see it through. So we do have one other character who didn't make our first session, but is part of the group. So this is a big party. We have 6 players, and up to this point, we had everybody submit their characters, except for this character. He was the late submission, and we were all joking around like we have a half a party because it's like half elves, half lings, half orc. Yeah, half a party. Ha ha ha. We're very clever. And then Swifty joined us. And Swifty is a full-blown human. So he broke the trend of being a half of something.
Very disappointing, Swifty.
So Swifty is a human wizard who has not a bit of a tragic backstory, which I'm sure will get unveiled as part of it. But he started basically, apparently, the part of the initial activities that happened before the game session was that there might have been a little drinking involved the day or two before that first session, and Swifty got apparently his nickname for being a little swift under the table, and was suffering a bit the next day, and then spent some time experimenting and focused on a good book and forgot to meet everybody for breakfast, which is where things kicked off.
Yep.
Who wants to kind of start us off with how things went down in the game?
It was interesting because the way our Ben had set it up is there were 2 separate kind of groups. Some of us had gotten to know each other, and we'll just say through drinking, because none of us have linked back. I mean, there might be little links that I'm not aware of, but the point is none of us seem to have like hardcore links like. I'm traveling with you all the time, but as near as I could tell, right? So it was interesting though, because we were all like kind of, I would say 2 separate tables sitting in a bar where, getting approached by, this dwarf who really has this need and wants to talk about the challenges surrounding this darkness. And there's this group that is out there killing people. And it's just, or at least that's a theory. She theorizes that this group is murdering people, and there's definitely been some assassinations, and it seems to tie to this group that they're in town and then somebody gets killed, and then they're in another town and somebody gets killed. So it's a very interesting coincidence. Looking for somebody to go out and do it. I mean, because this is an older dwarf. She doesn't, as near as I can tell, she's not particularly keen on going out and doing this kind of a rundown herself.
Mm-hmm.
It's bloody cold out there, and she's got
Yeah.
old person joint issues, for crack's sake.
This is for the young. Go do it.
Yeah.
But then, we kind of get introduced, and I think partially because, Koth and, what is Jason's?
Lindell.
Lindell, I think, has this interest in it because he was part of that group. And he got
Yeah.
out. He got out, as near as I could tell,
So he
before the
says.
murdering started. But
Yeah.
now he's like,
So he
oh,
says.
crap. At least that's my interpretation of Lindell, is Lindell was like, aw, crap. I know these people. I used to run with them, and now they're being accused of murder. So whether he's like, I don't really want to be known because I was part of that group and hunted, or whether it's like a personal, like, I didn't like them anyways, so I'm going to to exact my revenge. Don't know where his
Yeah,
motives are
yeah.
yet, but it's just an interesting kind of dynamic, because then they're like trying to talk their way in, and I was like, of course, Koth is like Koth. Lindell, good.
Lindell was good.
So
Yeah, I mean Lindell. I think he kind of was actually like, so the dwarf woman was talking to your group. It was you and Brian and Robin, but Frederica and
Deacon.
Deacon. I think Lindell was like eavesdropping or
Yep.
had overheard. I can't remember if he attempted to eavesdrop, but he kind of overheard and inserted himself because he heard the name of one of this former crew,
yeah, his former
his
boss,
thief crew,
right?
and so he kind of perked up to that and kind of inserted himself. And at this point, Koth and Lindell had essentially become friends. And they met in Bryn Shander and had just kind of been drinking buddies and been just doing odd jobs in Bryn Shander and stuff. So they were kind of together. And then, and so Lyndall came over and sort of said, hey, I know these people, and now, I'll have to remember, I might be remembering wrong, but I think he has some skin in the game of like you said, some revenge maybe against them, or
he definitely said he knew who he thought was pulling the strings in this group right now, and he seemed to not like them a whole heck of a lot. At least that was kind of my interpretation of what Lyndall said.
Yeah, so I will note there was some actual logic between how I put the group together.
Yeah.
So there are the people who were either very motivated to see the end of this darkness over Icewind Dale, or are local enough that it's a real issue. So finding out that there were other people that were interested in removing the darkness, that's the group one.
Right.
So that was the tying factor, and why you may not have necessarily had backgrounds that tie together, but you have this driving interest to discuss and theorize and figure out a way to undo the darkness that's overtaken the land for the last 2 years.
Yep.
So that's where from a joining everybody together, that's how I decided to do that.
Yeah.
And then the other two, I wanted to split the group up and bring it together and have some of that magic happen at the table, where there is some of this maybe distrust or trust, or very interesting dynamics of bringing adventuring companies together. Because so often in D&D games, it's 4 or 5, 6 random people that are meeting at a bar for the first time and get their first adventure, and somehow they're supposed to form like a group of adventurers that way. Yeah. So I wanted to capture some of that in this first session, but I didn't want it. But I wanted to have we did a lot of work leading up to it on backstories and tying people into the game world, that I wanted to be able to play on that. And I thought, what better way than to kind of bring things together, but have these 2 other characters who really are very different, but really aren't motivated necessarily by the overarching darkness, that they have separate motivations, that they have somehow met each other and have ties to the area potentially, but not necessarily the same overarching driving goal that the other 4 had, which Swifty is part of if Sean would have been able to make the first session, Swifty would have been part of that 4.
Yeah.
Which is how he will get introduced in the next session. So that's just DM's note. That's kind of what I was thinking there, just to kind of give you that from a role-playing perspective.
And I thought it worked really well. I mean, just because, there was that little bit of distrust, but then it was like, oh, we're kind of in the same boat. I mean, and it's just interesting because we do have different personalities. I mean, just we all do anyways. I mean, I'm interested in your thoughts, Brian. I mean, just from that first, like, interactions and...
Yeah, from the first setup, I guess it worked out. Yeah, it probably hasn't come across maybe like super direct as my character, but like I think he was fine being a little more distrustful in general of other people outside of his tribe. Maybe like I probably didn't do quite like an overemphasizing job of doing that, but obviously he's aware that he can't do all this by himself, kind of thing. And as long as people are going the same direction with him to help him out, like he's cool with that. And I think I don't know if I did the most questioning of Lyndall, but like he was definitely trying to kind of poke out and find more back at him. And since he had those ties to this group, we're kind of initially starting out after, like I was trying to kind of dig more of that out of him. Well, I don't know that I got motivation.
Yeah, you
but
definitely
like,
were questioning him, and
kind of some background to help
I think
us
it worked
out.
because the way Jason sort of presented his character was sort of real well spoken and sweet talking, and that just lent to this feeling of, are we really supposed to trust this guy? He kind of came out and said like, hey, I was a thief, let me help you. And so you're all kind of like, wait a minute, what?
The worst part is the thing that really made me like maybe I can trust him a little bit was Koth, because Koth's like, he good, and I was just like, okay. Koth's got the simplistic approach, but he is, I don't know. There's almost that childlike thing about him, but I was just like, okay, maybe I can trust him this much, just this little bit.
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. I'm certainly excited. So you guys had this initial introductions where you introduced your characters. You got that initial feel. You got this quest offered to you to go in search for this merchant caravan that has been at this location where all these murders that Lyndall's character described more as bandits rather than and banditry than merchants, and that there had been a new person with glowing blue eyes that had joined that band shortly before he left.
Yep.
And that you'd accepted it, and you talked her up a little bit on how much cash you were going to get for the job. But overall, it's you start. What are you guys doing now? You've taken this quest. You've had a few. She bought you a few rounds of fine ale at the tavern at the North Look, and now you're
way better beer than most of us could have afforded.
Oh
at
yeah,
this point.
definitely.
Oh, definitely. I can't afford what she's buying.
Yeah.
So what did you guys do?
This is where I thought it was interesting because different people really kind of focused on different things. Because I had in my head that my character's a little bit of a slob, and he's more focused on because he's actually not from this town. Unlike Cawthon and Lyndall have a more strong tie to this town. They're not from the town, but they they're working on the night guard, and they're so they have barracks, and they have whereas my character's just been here. I just have this image of his room is just a mess where he's dragged everything out, and he's a monk, so he's set up his little monk praying area and all this stuff. So he's mentally going, oh my god, it's going to take me hours to get ready to go. So he's kind of excuses himself and steps out of the way so he can spend a couple hours trying to put his stuff together to actually travel, right? But then I noticed the group just kind of focused on different things, so it was interesting to see where you guys went. But I'm going to shut up now because I'm busy packing my bags.
I didn't pick up on the fact that you had this vision of where you were staying was messy, but that makes sense when you kept saying because everybody's like, "What do you mean you're going to take you an hour to get ready?" I'm ready. My stuff right here.
Yeah, exactly. But I had this kind of vision in my head of kind of how my character is, and so I'm when he travels, I can see him being a little bit neater, but he's got this whole ritual. He sets the room up, and so it's it's going to take me a while to tear down.
It'll be interesting to see how you maybe play that up into camping and campsites and things like that when we get to more overland travel.
Yeah.
And then how the rest of the group deals with it. Who the messy roommate's going to be.
So you went to go.
He went off to pack his
pack,
things, basically, because we were going to leave the next day. All four of the rest of us, we went to the Sun Temple first, or was it the guard?
I think you went to the
guard place first. I think it was maybe the guard place first.
We went to the guard place because I was thinking. So the idea was that Koth and Lyndall Koth wants to do good. He's a simple fellow, and he wants to do things that are good. And so, he basically kind of tried to talk Lyndall into joining the Night Watch because he wanted to patrol the town and keep the peace and the order. Lyndall may have had other reasons for joining, but so they kind of had been working with the Night Watch just to earn a little bit of money. So we went to go talk to them because we wanted to find out if there had been one of the murders had happened in Bryn Shander recently, and we were trying to find out if maybe one of the senior people of the local guard knew anything, or if there were witnesses to the murder that we could question or something like that. I think that was the idea, right?
Yep. That was my character's idea, at least. I think you guys, had a little bit to settle up with
you were
the Night
let's
Watch,
see if
but
there's
he's
witnesses,
find more
and
information.
We need to talk to the guard.
Are you saying it's a problem if you're on the Night Watch and you just randomly disappear one day? I don't understand why that's a problem.
Yeah, I think they were actually supposed to be on shift that night or something too. So
I don't remember. I thought we blamed on this one guy, Ian, some other guard who fell asleep or something like that. I can't remember what it was.
The very simpleton guard, yeah.
Yeah. So we went and kind of tried to find some information out about that. That there was really nothing that
Yeah,
we learned at that
it's-
point. But
I thought it was developed. It was a little shady how little they knew a little bit.
oh, okay.
Maybe I'm misremembering that a little
No,
bit.
that's
but
interesting.
the one like bumbling guy kind of discovered it, and there's like, oh, it's a dead guy, and like they
Well-
kind of moved past it. Not much for
But they
investigation.
gave us a
and
little
stuff.
bit, like little
A little bit,
tidbits,
yeah.
like the ice daggers.
Oh,
and stuff.
that's
So you
right.
got some
Ice
of the more,
dagger, yeah.
like we got a little bit more about how they died and how it was kind of weird
Mhm.
and a little bit, you know. I mean, that's what I took away from it. Granted, in character, I know none of that, so we haven't had that conversation. But it was, you know, that was it. It was nice that we got a little bit more detail. So we get, in my mind, it ups the level of tension on this magic blue glowing. I mean, your mind starts to run wild with, what can this guy do? Like, how powerful is this guy? He's got magical glowing eyes. He can make daggers out of ice that
Yeah.
kill people, and you know, it's I don't know. It's kind of raises the mystery a little bit, I think. So
Well, and then there's the other aspect of the whole murder thing, which you haven't talked about, which is that right now, because of the sun being gone and everybody thinking that that Oriel is responsible, the 10 towns have like created this lottery system or whatever, where like basically every, I don't know, week, month or something, like everybody in the town draws names, or the like leaders of the town draw a name, and that person just gets killed and executed, like publicly potentially in some towns, and so I think the idea was that they were these executions were a sacrifice to Oriel to try to bring the sun back, right?
Mhm.
That was the kind of the backstory. And so the murders, I believe the dwarf woman told us that she thought that the people being murdered were people who had been up in the lottery to be executed, but had cheated or gotten out of it somehow.
They had gotten their names withdrawn from.
Yeah,
the
they got
lottery.
their names withdrawn from
Yeah.
the lottery. So there's another aspect of just sort of what's going on in these towns, and
Yeah.
why the people were gotten killed. It's still a mystery, but
Well, and it's just interesting because then you take people like my wife's character Rika. She is, you know, she's a druid, and I mean, I think to Ben's point earlier, this is normally a somewhat temperate town. I mean, I'm sure winter's a little longer than normal because it's a little farther north. It's like Wisconsin, but farther north. The thing that's interesting for her is you take someone who's a druid who's used to there being sunlight, plants, whatever, certain times a year, and for 2 years, like that whole thing has been upset. So she's like really driven to be like, this is bad. Like all the stuff, like these animals, plants, I mean, everything's out of kilter. And so it's just kind of an interesting dynamic to take like characters like that, because they're suddenly like, because I think that's where our 4 characters were all like, we have something in our backstory that really drives us to say this is wrong, this is just screwed up. And
Yep. It's the glue that ties you together to start with. So, yep, you talked to the guard. You found some information out. Then you went into the temple. I think it's
Sun Temple, right?
Yeah, with the
Yeah, I can't remember the
Lathander,
exact
I
name
think
of
it
it,
is.
oh no,
I
it's
can't-
somebody different now.
Or-
I remember thinking it should be Lathander, but it's like Aminator or something like that.
No, I don't remember. I don't remember what it was.
Whatever the
off top of
current
my head.
Forgotten Realms Sun Guard is. Insert name here.
I'd have to go look at my session notes. Maybe I wrote it down. But anyways, you went and sum that up real quick. You didn't find out much, but the local priest there was more than happy to take your tithe and take your
blessed be thee.
you know.
Yeah,
They're ready to take
We were
all the
hoping to-
money we didn't have.
we were hoping they were concerned about the darkness and lack of sun in some way, but
yeah.
they
But-
weren't. So they just wanted more whatever.
They'll take your shiny to make it shiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, there's definitely the potential for potions of healing and other things were
Yep.
clearly made available to you through that. So
Yep.
at that point, you guys kind of rambled around town for a little bit, and then decided to finally head out. And what happened?
Yeah, it was the next morning, I think was our set out time, and we barely get out the gates and run into not really trouble, but sidetracking, I would say. So we discover, like, coming whatever down the path out of town, we're headed on to the east in this case. I think it was. It doesn't really matter what direction it
you
was.
were heading out
but,
the east gate.
Yeah.
There was kind of some rough-looking well, not rough in a intimidating, bad-looking way, but rough as
Bedraggled,
yeah,
perhaps?
bedraggled maybe. Dwarfs coming at us. I think one of them was a little worse off than the other ones, but we ended up speaking to them, and they had been attacked by a Yeti, I think it was.
Yep, Tundra Yeti.
They were hauling some iron ore ingots or something like that to the town and had gotten attacked. And I don't remember. It wasn't too far away from town, but it was definitely a little ways out. So they ended up, I don't remember if they promised us like a gem, I think it was. Like
It
a,
was a
a
gem.
spendy
Ruby.
gem, and
It
also
was
like,
a ruby and
hey, you'll gain our favor kind of thing, which
the
may come in time
undying
later.
gratitude.
They were from the
Clan
mountain.
Battlehammer.
They were from the clan Battlehammer from the mountain, I think Ben was
Which is
referencing with the
also a
dwarves.
callback for those of you who read the original Dred Stewart and Icewind Dale books that R.A. Salvatore put together. Brunner Battlehammer is the owner or the original lord over Kelvin's Cairn, and so these are dwarves that had chose when he left Icewind Dale that these dwarves of Clan Battlehammer chose to stay because they had made families for themselves and made a life for themselves at Kelvin's Cairn. So these are dwarves that are the remnants of that clan.
Yep.
So kind of cool little toss in there. I don't know that many of you had actually or have recently read the books. I'm in the middle of rereading the books myself for research, but it was a great tie-in for me to like, oh, hey, I recognize that immediately. Like that's part of something that was tied to these books that I read and loved.
It's like it's like when you watch a movie sometimes and you catch the little reference that you're like, oh, that's from that movie or some other book or something like that.
Exactly.
So,
So hopefully, if you didn't pick it up and you've read those books, hopefully you can kind of pick that up now and be like, oh, cool, I've earned the favor of those, and you might have a little bit more of an idea that might actually mean something.
yeah. But I thought that was a nice little twist coming right out of the gate because it threw my character into a tizzy. So this is where you guys get a little see a little bit what's under the cover, right? And so my character is very much got one of those like folk hero, save the little guy kind of mentality. So he's suddenly faced with this sort of mentally horrific decision, right? Because he's like, from one perspective, people are murdering people. This is terrible. We need to do something about this. And it seems like if we don't find these people soon, that troop might move on, and then we got to try to figure out where the heck they've gone, right? And then from another perspective, I'm like, but here's some people that really need help, and they're right in front of me. So it was just kind of like,
Yeah, I think it was a big point of decision for our party right off the bat of what to do, and it kind of might have revealed some motives of, or whatever, more of people's personality in the decision here. I don't remember if I brought it up early already, but my character being like of nature and stuff, I don't think I pushed it in our decision a whole lot. Like most everybody was for, I think, helping the dwarfs, but I was trying to get it across that my character was like, they got caught out by a Yeti. They weren't ready for it. Nature got them. It's kind of their fault, kind of thing. And I'm definitely more
you
focused
should
on
know better.
Oriel and like this strange, like odd guy. I think the other thing we didn't point out, like he seems to be like invulnerable to the cold, like not wearing any, along with the glowing blue eyes and the ice dagger stuff, like not wearing any winter gear when they're out and about in the harsh weather.
Yep.
So I was really focused, like my character wants to get this stuff done, that's why he's here, messing with these town folk and everything, and like it was on our way, but then we were gonna have to track back and like let them know, since they were gonna wait at the town for us, what happened, and potentially haul this big sled of ore or whatever back as well. So
Yeah, and I mean, I think that was that was the hard part for my character, is like in character he was just kind of like really torn on the subject, but then he was like, but here's these bedraggled dying people right in front of me, I need to help them. and that's where he let that side of him take over, and he just was like, boom, I've got to do it. And I think that's going to be an interesting challenge, because I look across the campaign world as I see it, and I'm like, this could really become a huge pain in the butt for my character, because he's just going to be like, people always need help.
Got to do all the side quests.
This is an awful place. I could try to save everyone, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
No, and the campaign book is very open-ended. So the campaign, this is going to come out in a blog article probably before or right around when this episode releases. I've got my own DM's thoughts on organizing and getting started with Icewind Dale, and I'll continue to do some of these thoughts on this particular campaign as it goes through, and why I made some of the decisions that I made in the background to get us through this module. But as the DM, you're given 10 starting locations that you can start the party at, and then 2 starting quests on top of each one of the 10 starting locations has its own quest that could be used as an alternative starting quest. So I have 12 choices, basically, to give you a starting quest. I gave you 1, and I'm like, I really want to give you this one too. So I gave you 2 quests and let you choose. I'm like, this is supposed to be an open-ended world, so my line of thought was, I'm going to give you the choice. You choose your fate, and either way, I can build in consequences to this world as well as narrative direction for how things can go. And I've had this kind of thought out, and because it took us so long to get things started, I had a lot of time to think this through. And either way, though, I knew generally the way I wanted you to go through that first session, and you didn't surprise me in a wrong direction there. They give me I figured for sure you would take the more immediate threat or the more immediate need.
Interesting.
But I wasn't 100% sure. And I was ready to run both.
It's interesting because I really like hearing your guys' thought process, which I did not pick up on a lot when we were playing.
Yeah, I think we didn't get quite enough of that.
It's super cool to hear that, and that that there was this conflict there for you. Like to hear that and know that was going on in your heads is really revealing. That's cool. I for Koth, for me as a player, I was just like, oh, let's just do this, because in my head I'm going, oh, it's a side quest, we'll just knock that out real quick and then get back to the main quest. So how I would justify that as Koth, though, is I think Koth probably just forgot that they were doing something and oh, these people need help, let's help them now. So
wait, were we supposed to be doing something more?
Yeah, oh, help people. Okay, go
Koth
ahead.
is not the most intelligent.
He's not very intelligent. He's not an idiot, but he certainly doesn't speak very well. I mean, he's been a slave most of his life. He barely knows how to speak common properly. So
yeah, I mean,
I think he just forgot what they were doing.
I just thought it was a great little sort of mental twist at the beginning, though obviously we've failed as a party, because if we haven't made the GM go, damn it, and
he had a long time to prepare for it.
There were certainly as you guys were starting to explore Bryn Shander and go to some of these locations, I was having a couple of those moments oh crap, I didn't see them actually going here. I hadn't thought about the NPCs there, so I'm like, ooh, quick scan the adventure module, because that's a key location that there's supposed to be somebody at. Or not necessarily as the adventure, that's they actually have it in the book, give you a little background and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And how am I going to embody? So the priest at the temple was definitely me winging it on the fly.
Awesome.
I had not thought about how I wanted to work that. So I'm so I just did that on the fly, and when there was, this person doesn't really know a whole lot. Well, that's because I couldn't think of anything on the fly that the person should have known to apply to what you wanted.
Awesome.
So
that's awesome.
so clearly it wasn't important. But it was a lot of fun. And then you went and helped the dwarves and dealt with the elements. The blizzard came on, and
an odd voice whispering.
Oh
yeah,
right.
To be seen what that was about. But.
Did everyone hear that voice?
I thought it was just you and
I
don't know if Wendell told it, but you guys kind of
I
said everybody.
think
else.
a perception check. I think I made people roll.
That was one of my 3s, I think I rolled, or something like that.
Yeah.
My dice are a little manic depressive. They don't really know what they want to do. So it's like it's either a 20 or a 1 or something like that. There are no middle ground. So
I don't remember any ones being rolled though.
No,
No, not yet.
So.
I think we had one crit in the combat right
Yeah,
away.
I think there was a crit. But yeah, no ones. So
Yeah, so we were tracing back this sled, right? That the
Yeah.
dwarves
Yeah.
had, like, full of iron. We were trying to find that, and then
we found where the attack had occurred and the bloody remains of the dwarf.
the
Right.
fourth dwarf of
The
their
fourth-
party.
Yep. And I'm sure it was quite frozen by that point. So
Yeah, frozen and descriptive.
yeah,
I tried to.
Yeah, it was.
It was missing its head or something.
Yeah.
The head and the stomach had been ripped open, and it was
all
pretty
the juicy, soft bits that are tasty.
There's supposed to be a little bit of a horror aspect to this campaign as well. So some of those things and elements that are like that, like you try to help you imagine that sequence. I want you to envision how awful it is, because at some point, there also needs to be like this idea that, okay, you guys came across a Yeti attack, and this is what a Yeti could do. The first time you encounter a Yeti, you guys should be thinking, like, my characters are terrified, right? Because
Yeah.
we've seen what a Yeti can do.
Yeah. And then, got to see that we could see some tracks. That's where this sled must have been heading off. Didn't take us long to find it, though.
Oh, my Lord. I didn't think you guys were going to pass a successful
had
check
some-
to find those tracks. There
good
was
checks,
several
yeah.
rolls there before you finally had one
Yeah, I
that
think
was
we
like,
all
hey,
had
I
to
figured
check
out how to...
until somebody
like,
found something.
I was like, oh, man, I'm just going to have to, like, have these guys find the tracks and, like, somehow narratively pull this in. But finally, I got a decent dice roll out of someone. And I'm like, okay, you found the tracks.
I'm prety sure it was the sorcerer, wasn't it? Or
I thought it was
the
you almost.
I don't
Wasn't
think
it?
so.
Oh, really?
Because my character was like every perception check I had to roll. I'm pretty sure
I thought
it
it was you
like,
discovered
what
the
am I
sled
doing?
tracks or
Picking my
something like that.
nose or staring at my belly
Or maybe that
button
was
or
the
something.
second.
But apparently finding
but-
the tracks of several goblins pushing a giant dog sled full of heavy iron ore that had not been snowed over, it just happened after the snow, was really hard to do. But they did it.
It's white on white with white
It was dark.
In the dark.
in the dark.
Yeah,
I mean, come
right.
on, man.
yeah.
So you track these goblins down.
Yep.
And I thought this was probably one of the most interesting sequences of the night. Because there were a number of ways that you could have dealt with this encounter. It did not necessarily. I wanted to give you guys in your first session an opportunity to have a combat encounter, but I wasn't going to force it.
Right.
No, you
And
set it
certainly
up,
from
yeah.
the goblins' mindset, these goblins they found loot in the middle of the tundra, just
Yeah, it was a
happened to
thing of
find it,
Opportunity.
and we're taking advantage of opportunity. They, so.
Yep.
They could have been talked to. They could have been a lot of things. It was really interesting to see what Koth and Deacon did.
Yeah, we had quite a long
we
discussion
debated
for
it,
the whatever the chance encounter, but it was kind of good. I think it broke down to let's do something. Like we were all talking.
I
about
really
it
did
forever.
feel like it because it felt
And
like
then
we
I
were
was like-
talking too much, and
Yeah.
I mentally always try to say if we're talking, that means we're talking in character
Yeah,
too.
like
We're
this
not
is
gonna debate
an
this.
instantaneous
And we just
encounter.
kept getting closer to him, and I was like, "Somebody do something."
Yeah, I think
Just like, it was just interesting because Koth kind of takes this. Well, you were trying to scare him, right?
Yeah, so I think Koth wasn't 100% comfortable just running in to attack them, right? I mean, he's a paladin, or he's soon to be. I mean, we're level 1, so
Yeah.
he's,
it was
not-
like 6 or 8
hasn't
goblins
fully
or
taken his
something like
paladin
that, too.
oaths yet, so we'll see what that he ends up going in what direction. But he wasn't going to just straight up murder him.
I think he didn't like goblins though, right? I don't remember.
He's probably fought some goblins. I
Justin,
don't know.
the player, was using a whole lot of. Oh my
We're only
God!
level
God,
one.
this
Oh, no,
could go
for sure.
50-50
Yeah.
either way.
There was
with
some
this many
metagaming
goblins.
first.
There was some definite metagaming going
Yes,
as we were
absolutely.
walking up.
Yep.
And I think that did more to get you guys into a mindset that wasn't like we
Just
don't
straight
want to
fight 'em,
go into
yeah.
a straight combat here
Yeah.
because we might have a TPK.
How many goblins were there?
There were 6 pushing the sled.
6, and then
And then
a
then-
caravan
And
with
then
more?
there was
or one more?
Yeah, there was the wagon being pulled by the two polar
The wagon.
bears that you could see.
Oh, yeah, and two
the
polar
one
bears.
goblin on top of it.
A polar bear's pulling a wagon, and then the 6 goblins. And 6 goblins against, I mean, we're 6 people, but we're still level 1. So my metagaming radar was going off a little for sure.
Yep.
So Bookoth decided he was just going to try to scare these goblins off, and I think he just yelled at them that, it wasn't
their
their
stuff,
ore,
yeah.
like, it's not your stuff, like, give it back or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And at the same time,
And then-
Deacon
yeah.
walks up.
Yeah, I pulled a little intimidation tactic. That came from kind of my character building. I think it was one of the sorcerer, whatever, efficient, I don't remember what it's called, skills that you can choose when building your character. One of them I chose was intimidation. So he came up and kind of just popped a handful of fire as kind of a backing up cost threat to scare those goblins out.
Yeah. Well, let me just say, as I'm thinking, how are these goblins going to work? I mean, they're scavengers. These goblins themselves are not combatants necessarily. They're out on the open tundra, so they probably have seen some combat. But this group of unknown people, humanoids, one wielding fire like it's magical, and another one that's a big orc who's, their tribe has had issues with the orcs. They were immediately intimidated.
Well, and I look at it from the perspective of, think of it from the setting too. Like in a traditional world, right? You think, Koth's probably still, I mean, you're going to be able to size him up. He's a half orc, but you're going to be able to go, he's wearing pretty strong mail and, whatever, and he's probably dressed as you can kind of size people up quickly. In this setting, I don't have a damn clue what you are, except maybe the weapon that you're carrying, because everybody's going to be wearing heavy cloaks, or they're going to be wearing furs and layers of, you know what I mean, heavy winter stuff. I'm my head mentally, I sit there and go, it's going to be I don't know if you're wearing plate mail or something insane underneath it. I'm not going to know till that first strike whether you're soft and squishy or you're going to be a nightmare for me to deal with. And that's I'm trying to think of their mental calculus going,
Yeah.
He's big, he's intimidating, he's got fire. I don't know, man. I'm
this
just
big
going to
orc,
go.
dude with a fire all up in his hands, just marching out of the blizzard, huge figures marching toward these poor little goblins. That was the image I was hoping to.
I mean, it was an intimidation check with advantage, and the goblins immediately started falling back. It was a measured retreat. They were falling back to the wagon and eventually trying to bug out. But I think Lindell got a lucky So we went into at this point we went into combat and had everybody roll initiative, and Lindell I think acted first. So she whipped out her. I think she's got a short bow, or he's got a.
He's got a short
bow, and whipped out, and I think that was the crit of the night right there. Dead goblin right
that
off the
was
bat.
first one.
Yep.
Before they even moved, I think I moved.
They
I think you had the
they
intimidation.
went
They started.
first.
They went backwards, and then
Their boss was on the wagon, kind of cracked the whips. I thought kind of stayed their retreat from us, and it was like, hey, no, that's our stuff we found, and kind of willed them into fighting back against us. Was kind of the feel I got out of it.
I don't think anybody in the party spoke Goblin, so we
No.
and I'm pretty sure the one on the top never said anything in common. Or,
No, it snarled
so it was
something
like
at the other goblins.
So it was we definitely had a communication gap there.
I don't think anybody really tried to speak to the goblins in common, though. So there was, I fully had them prepared to be able to speak common and a voice ready for it, but it just didn't happen. So
Save that voice. Save that
so I
voice
can
for next
save
time.
that for later. So you guys ultimately got the wagon, and it surprised me a little bit that you didn't press the attack a little bit more, but you kind of hunkered down around the wagon, which I was hoping for maybe a little more substance in the combat to let other characters. It ended up turning into kind of this ranged thing, and there were a number
Well,
of
the goblins
characters
are
that
cheating, yeah.
couldn't do close combat. So, it left the session. I think I left the session. You guys were heroes, right? You succeeded. You got the ore, but I felt it left the session where some of the characters maybe didn't get to shine or use their abilities quite as much as they could have.
Yeah,
so.
I was never in melee.
We definitely did take some dicey damage too. I
Oh,
think.
yeah.
It was like, well, the worst part is
Most
I'm
of us
standing
were-
next to the intimidating one. They're like, let's shoot the monk. Which, I mean, I get it. I was the next tallest, like one of the next tallest, like, I think I had my staff out. So, I mean, at a minimum, it's like, dude with the staff, probably another warrior. He's up front. We're going to attack him. And totally made sense. But then it was just kind of one of those, like you said, we never really closed the distance. And the way they were backing up and we could move, I was just like, let him retreat. My character's mentally going,
Yeah.
they were just doing, like you said, the scavenger thing. Totally reasonable. If they're going to let us be and they're going to take their wagon off, cool, let them go. And then we don't need to slaughter them to a person.
Who knows? There might be consequences for that too.
There could be,
I mean,
but
they
we can
did
always
have-
hope that they go, well, you had the chance to slaughter us and you didn't.
They did have polar
An
bears.
attempt might have been made.
I think you and was it just Rika talking about maybe I should try to talk to the polar bears? Like,
She wanted
Oh,
to
she
try and
totally-
free
them or
them too.
something. Yeah.
But they were like big and angry, and it's like, I don't know.
think if she'd had a different spell set up for the day, she would have totally just done it. And there's nothing
Yeah.
any of us could have done to stop it.
That's awesome.
So
Because she would have been like,
Could've gone
oh,
a
yeah,
different
I'm
way."
going to charm those polar bears, and we're totally going to get that wagon on the way back.
So eventually, you guys make it back to town. You cash off the and get
Yep.
your reward, which is the gem and the favor of the dwarves.
We
which-
did bring back the body of their fallen dwarf comrade for
Yep.
proper burial. Point that
little
out.
bonus positive there. Yep.
Yep.
And which was not required, but that was awesome. And then that's kind of where we leave everybody with the big, hey, you guys were all level 1? Well, guess what? Level 2. Level 2. So everybody got to level up here. I just made you roll your hit points dice,
Yep.
or your hit die dice, if you chose to roll it at the table rather than taking the mean
Default,
average,
whatever it's
whatever the default is in the book that says you can take, which I think plays better for some of the the weaker spellcasters like the wizard. And,
Especially early level
Yeah.
too.
early gives you a
Yeah,
consistent
unless you're
not
really
whiff on
good
a
at
one.
rolling sixes. If you're really good at rolling ones, you're going to hurt.
But I think everybody else that rolled, I think did.
I rolled a 6 on my D8.
I think everybody that chose to roll actually did better than the average,
I got one less than the
or
average,
except for you. Yeah,
which
you're
is fine.
close.
I got hit points. Anyways.
Makes sense for
I'm-
Koth.
Yeah, you got a big
I'm
dice
good.
too.
That's
You're
fine.
rolling, right?
Yeah,
You're
it's a
rolling
D10,
10.
so-
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And that's where we leave off. So
Yeah.
our next session will be here in another week, next weekend. I'm
Totally pumped.
less than
Yeah.
7 days away now. I'm super excited. I have some furious hobby projects that I need to finish. I ran out of paint of a certain color, so I had to order more paint, and
Blood
then it
red.
was, man, it was like out everywhere. So I found a place, and I found 2 places and ordered from 2 places. It showed up from one. I don't think it's shipped from the other yet. So, so I've got it. I've got a few days. I have plenty of time to finish it up, and hopefully you guys get to experience it, and it'll be awesome. And I've done some other cool stuff. I'm looking forward to a full group at the table, all 6 of you,
Yeah.
with all the challenges that will present the DM as well. Yeah, it's been great. It's been great getting back into D&D. It's been, oh my lord, it's been ridiculously long since I played D&D. So,
Yeah.
Definitely looking
loved
forward
it.
to it.
I thought it was just interesting to see the different dynamics of people and how they played their characters. Like I felt like Brian and mine were a little more subdued characters wise. Like
For sure,
you're-
so far, yeah.
At least so far, what I've seen of your character, yours seems quiet, calculating. Like he does speak his mind, and he's definitely looking for things. But it's like he's not got that like larger than life thing that we've seen yet. Like Reek is just out there.
Yep.
Koth has Koth just has such a simple way of looking at the world, but it's very distinct. And so Koth just kind of jumps out of the page, and Lyndall too. Like he always seems like that slimy car salesman thing he's got going on or something. And, but it's just interesting to see because like I'll be interested to see where Brian's stuff develops. I mean, I think we got to see a little under the covers
little,
here, but I'm just saying it'll be interesting to see where we start to hit things that mean something to some of the more quiet characters. You know what I mean? That aren't like
Yeah. Part of it's figuring out like the role playing aspect for me. I know that's one of like my weaker things. Like this time I've at least, Ben and everybody's kind of put out some resources to kind of help think about that more. And it's really just having to think about your character and have an idea of who your character is when it comes, in the moments to put that out there. So it's just a lot. And as we go on, I think all of our characters are going to kind of develop more and we'll learn more about them in those instances. So I'm looking forward to that myself.
I have a ton for each of you to play off of your backgrounds that's going to get tied in. And for some of you, that'll mean learning a whole lot about your backgrounds. And for some of you, this is going to be things that might tie into actual adventures that you're going in on games. And some of this, I can just say I'm like super excited because there are a lot of super fun things that I have planned to kind of toy off of that to just bring this whole narrative together that I think everyone's going to love those surprises. And it's just going to, I've ran a lot of Dungeons & Dragons games. For a first session, I've never felt so excited about the narrative or the group of players and the whole story that came out of that. Like there was that moment in dealing with the goblins there at the end. Like it just was a D&D moment that it worked so flawlessly, and it was so easy and natural to work with and just wrap it into the narrative without having to even flinch. I'm like, oh, you guys are dealing with it this way. That sounds cool. Let's roll that intimidation check with advantage. Yeah, that worked. How am I going to deal with that? Okay, let's play with it because at the end of the day, you guys are the heroes of the story, and if I don't do my job to help, I mean, I'm not going to pull punches, but if I don't do my job to help you guys feel like you're the heroes of the story and that the story is about you, I haven't done my job. And it just flowed so well like that. There was no adversarial, there was no anything. It was just a real good collaborative storytelling experience.
Yep.
Well, and that was just kind of a cool moment for me because you really had been just kind of quiet and a little under the radar. And it was like this moment, and he was just like, bam, I'm just going to step up with the intimidation. I was just like, where did that come from?
It was like the defining moment of Deacon the entire night. It was all of a sudden, it's like Brian's been kind of quiet and
here's the badass.
He's said a lot during the session, but very reserved, very quiet, which it might be things that you decide to pull into your character and make that part of how that character is portrayed. But then all of a sudden,
I don't know. It was clear that he was a sorcerer or anything necessarily in our party yet. And
we had
I did get pretty.
I don't think anybody's class roles are really clear other than Jason's rogue.
I did get pretty lucky in the combats that my firebolt was messing up the lead goblin.
Yeah, that thing was. You were having some pretty wicked rolls. So, it was like, did I hit? Oh,
unfortunately, there was only a couple.
And then
of
it was
them,
like, how much did I do on damage? Yes.
Yeah.
Firebolt's a strong cantrip for a ranged combat spell. I think it's on most wizards from what I can tell, and sorcerers.
Yeah, I was pulling stuff a little bit. Like I didn't use any of my level 1 spells or anything like that. So we'll see what happens.
Why
next
would
time,
you if you were rolling like you were on cantrips?
Well, that's the thing. I was waiting for my luck to run out, and then I'll miss on one of the level 1s, and it's like, oh dang it.
So, anyways, I'm glad you guys all had fun. I certainly had a blast.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is our first episode ever of Wisco Dice that we featured a role-playing game. In the future, we're going to be putting out episodes on our feed called The Tales of the Cold North that will feature our post-session thoughts and experiences. We covered our hobby projects today. We talked about our D&D session. We've talked about all of this, but we're really excited to announce. And in fact, I'm announcing this, and unless everybody read their show notes, they're not. They were hearing this for the first time too. Although we did talk about doing a post episode or a post session episode kind of thing. So I'm going to try to get some of the players after each session to sit down and record. Probably do it a remote recording for post sessions, and it'll show up right on our same feed where you find this podcast. So if you're wanting to find out more about this campaign and follow this campaign, just grab the episodes for Tales of the Cold North. That will be featured on our RSS feed and go out through our website and enjoy, because I think there's going to be a lot of great stories, and I'm really excited to see where these characters grow and become in their future. That said, we talked about our hobby projects this episode with a heavy dose on on working for our D&D, which is obviously the kind of the big part of what's been going on in our gaming lives lately. And finally, we did catch up on a number of amazing board games, and it's great to see that we still are getting all that gaming time. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you leave a review of this show wherever your favorite place is to find podcasts. Oh, and by the way, give us a like on our Facebook page. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, or Pinterest while you're at it. If you haven't looked recently, make sure you catch up on the blog at wiscodice.com. Hey, Brian, what's that site?
Ah, darn, I forget. Justin, what's our website again?
Wiscodice.com.
That's right, it's wiscodice.com. And until next time, everyone, peace out.